Bicycles, testing, 1, 2, 3. Johnny, what are you doing?
Where is it?
What are you looking for?
The memory card. I dropped it here last night.
Did you?
Yeah, can't find it now. Oh, brilliant.
But you found it?
No, but I found pork pie. I dropped it just before Christmas.
You're not really, I'm not going to. No, are you? Yes, he has. Disgusting.
I'll save that for this later.
Really? I can't believe that. Oh my goodness. Come on, John. We've got an interview to do with Dave Hodrien in Birmingham. Come on.
Oh, right. Cameras, tripods, got phones, got the lights there. Paul, you're ready?
I'm here. I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
So Dave Hodrien's ready. Right, let's get going.
Come on, John!
I'm coming.
Oh, yeah, Right, I'm coming. Okay.
There are some things you may hear in this that may sound absolutely incredible to you, and how could this possibly be real? But I'm going to talk about real information here from real cases that have occurred, both ones I've investigated and some of the famous cases that have occurred around the world.
Welcome to Unite Planet. We're joined here by Dave Hodrien. He's welcomed us into his home. Thank you very much. We're going to talk about Birmingham UFO group and how we got into it, and all the cases that you looked at. We'll get in more detail. So could you let us know first the background about how you got into UFOs and your interest, and how you started the UFO group?
Yeah,
UFO
sure
group.
thing. Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah, so got a big backstory to be fair.
Yeah,
That's quite an early age. I've always had a general interest in the paranormal, really, not just UFOs, other things, other aspects, ghosts, psychic abilities, that sort of thing. And I remember just reading books as a child and just sitting there and spooking myself out late at night with the torch, you know what I mean? But I started to look into UFOs, I suppose, in more depth from about age 10, 11 sort of age. And the more I looked into it, the more I realised just how many cases there were on record. And the more you look into it, the more you realise they can't all be fabricated. I was thinking maybe some of these are hoaxes, maybe some are misidentifications, but there's a lot of cases on record with really, really good evidence to support them. Multiple witnesses, people with high credentials talking about these things, etc. And I thought it can't all be fake. And that's what spurred my interest further. UFO magazine at the time, one of the best UFO publications there's ever been, they had a yearly conference, and they started having the conference in Solihull, which is where I live, where we are right now. And it was really great. It was really convenient because I didn't drive back then, you know. But I could go to the conference, so I just got a bus in and just started going to conferences. And I still remember now just going to the first UFO conference and just seeing people talking about cases they'd investigated, or sometimes even witnesses talking firsthand. And I thought it'd just be really impressive and really interesting to be on the front lines with that subject and speak with people who are just seeing these incredible things. But over the years, I carried on going to conferences, at least one a year, and my interest in the subject has grown steadily. Didn't really get involved in investigative work until 2007. Now I could have got got involved a lot sooner than that if I wanted. There was a UFO Research Midlands UFORM. Was a group that just supporting the whole of the West Midlands area, but they were quite distant, hard to reach. Back in late 2007, guys named Craig and Mark, living in Quinton in Birmingham, they decided that being a large city, second biggest city in the UK, Birmingham deserved its own UFO organisation. So they were the original chairman of BUFOG. They were the concept originally came from them, and they put together. It just started literally as just a meeting in the corner of a pub, and we came across it online, and it just sounded really great. I thought, oh, brilliant! It's within reach. Just go and chat to people who've had experiences, and it'd be really interesting. Yeah. So me and my brother were two of the first members to sign up for Birmingham UFO Group, or BUFOG as we call it. So we went down there and everything. And while we were there in one of the initial meetings, met these four young lads who'd had an experience the previous year in Kings Winford, North Birmingham. And essentially, they'd seen this black octagonal-shaped craft. It seemed really, really impressive, and it was a multiple witness case. And I was like, that's really interesting. And just got talking with them, and I decided it'd be a good idea to go out to the location where it happened. Just be really interesting to just go and see whether they'd seen this. And so I said to them, can we do this? Can we go out to the location one evening? And they were well up for it. So we headed out there one night. And Craig and Mark approached me and they said, well, do you want to write a report up? Do you want to write a report on their case for Birmingham UFO Group? And I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds fun. Why not? So I prepared some interview questions, and I didn't tell them I was going to interview them at all. I just went out there for the evening, and then at a certain point of the night, I just taken them to one side and just basically asked them about what they'd seen and got them to draw pictures and everything. And the pictures pretty much, matched to the letter. You get slight variation in multiple witness cases. That's natural. It doesn't just apply to UFOs. It applies to anything where there's slight variations. Sometimes people might recall seeing one colour light and somebody might see another. But generally, it was the same object that they'd seen clearly, and the details all matched up that they gave me independently, all four of them, without any preparation that they knew I was going to do this. So it was really interesting to me. It was a very good case. It's still, even now, it's still a really, really good case. So I wrote up this big case report of it, put all the witness drawings in and that, and gave it to Craig and Mark, and they put it on the Birmingham UFO Group website. And it wasn't long after that they said, do you want to become the official investigator for the group? And I welcomed the chance. I thought, why not? This is here we go. Now I could have become an independent investigator. I know a lot of other researchers out there have their own websites dedicated to themselves essentially, and they just research. But I like the idea of being an investigator for a particular group. And as I live in Birmingham, it's what better to be the investigator for Birmingham UFO Group. So at that point, I became the investigator for the group. And from that point onwards, I would investigate cases that were coming in via the Birmingham UFO Group website or phone or email. Sometimes you get a load come in at once, other times it'd be kind of quieter periods. But over the years, I've investigated literally hundreds and hundreds of cases now.
Wow.
In 2009, for Craig and Mark, it was a short-term thing for them, and they wanted to hand over the group to somebody they knew had the passion and drive to keep the group going. So, of course, they offered me the position of chairman of the group while continuing to be the lead investigator for the group, and I welcomed that chance as well. Took over the running of BUFOG, and we've been going ever since. And now in our 10th year. Literally had our 10th anniversary back in November last year. So, going strong. I'd say we're probably one of the more active UFO groups in the UK. It requires a kind of certain level of dedication to keep one of these groups going long term. And you find that a lot of groups, they may have a website, but they don't hold actual meetings. Well, the meetings thing was quite important for me. I like the idea of a community that come together to talk directly about the subject. It is, after all, a very, very important subject, I believe, and one that should be openly discussed by people. So I decided that I wanted to do the meetings part, and that would remain an integral part of the group. And it has been ever since. We hold monthly meetings in Albury, North Birmingham, and we invite speakers to come and talk, sometimes from abroad when they're in the country, and show documentaries and films and that sort of thing. And we've got a nice little collective of people who come down regularly for that. Numbers vary month by month. Sometimes it can be massively popular, other months quite quiet. But we're self-funded, so I don't take any money at all from the group. It's just really just the money that we get in off our entrance fees just goes for paying for further meetings and to keep it going. And it's always been a passion of mine, and it's I really like both running a UFO group and also investigating on the front lines on the subject.
Fantastic. Yeah. So do you find do you have a job separate to this as well?
I do indeed. Yeah, I have a day job.
Do you find it sometimes overlaps and anything like that? Does it? I mean, as people at work, have they come to the groups? Have you?
I've informed them. Let them know about it. So it's up to those individuals if they wanted to come. They'd be more than welcome to. For me, I mean, it takes some of my free time in the evenings and everything. It takes a lot of time, in fact, you can do.
I can imagine it.
It depends on the case I'm working on. Sometimes, because I like to write case reports, so one of the things I do, I believe that each sighting is essentially a story that should be told. And I think that it doesn't do it enough justice just taking down it was this size, it was this colour, that sort of thing, and just putting that out there. I like to just give a whole narrative for the case, and I usually ask the witness for diagrams to go in there, any photographs or video footage, which doesn't happen as often as people think it would even today. There's a lot of reasons for that, which I can go into if you wish. But essentially, I put those case reports together and put them out publicly on the BUFOG website. I've now written literally hundreds of reports on there. Some of them are quite small, a page long. Some of them are massive. There's some on there that are about 200 pages long. So pretty much half a book length. Some of the bigger cases I've investigated, which generally involve contact, ET contact, otherwise known as alien abduction. Some of those cases, the individual is what's known as a repeater, and that means they've had experiences throughout their life, and it usually starts quite an early age and goes right through to present day. And in some of the cases, they've had over sort of 100 experiences, and I documented them in extreme detail. I pride myself on accuracy of those reports. I think it's very important to get the full facts as they're reported, not to embellish them or change what they're telling me. I try not to lead the witnesses when I'm speaking with them. I'll let it come from them as much as possible. So I won't go to them and I won't say, tell me about the aliens you saw. What I'll do is I'll say something like, have you had any experiences that you would consider to be outside of the norm in some way? And I let it come through from them, and I take down all those details. And it's only after I've got those details that I would then inform them. I've dealt with other cases where other people have seen the same sort of thing, and I might even point them in the direction of similar reports so they can have a read out for their own interest. So it does require a lot of work. Not only the writing the report, sometimes I go out to meet people directly where that's necessary. A lot of the time in this electronic age it's not necessary. We've got Skype, we've got email, etc., phone and all that, so I can speak with them directly via that means. But sometimes where it's a big case and they've had a lot going on, I can go and sit with an individual for hours and hours and hours. And you get more out of a person when you're speaking with them directly. And also you can see the integrity as well. Like when you're talking with them directly, you can tell they're not fabricating this stuff.
There's the way they put themselves forward into
you can feel it.
You can
talk about it like real experiences.
You can.
And some of these things deeply affect people on an emotional level.
I read about the Buxton case. I thought was very detailed. And this is what I got from when I was reading it. Really deep, and there's definitely an emotional attachment to it. And
that was quite a moving case. There was aspects of that were quite hard to deal with.
And obviously you have to hide the real names because of the sensitivity of it, which is totally understandable. But I was interested how the protection that some of these beings would have on certain people. They felt that was. I thought it was really quite incredible.
Really?
It's almost like they're kind of looking after them for whether that's for their gain or our gain.
You mentioned that in the report.
But I mean, we're getting into more detailed aspects of contact there.
But,
there does seem to be a connection.
Is this the protection aspect of this been repeated in other cases?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
A lot of the contactees or abductees, whatever you want to call them, experiences, various ways of describing them, they will talk about incidents where they feel they've been protected from harm. Sometimes that will come through in psychic type incidents where they've had a premonition that they're going to be involved. I believe there was, in that boxing case, there was one aspect of that where she was saved from a car crash. She knew it was going to happen before it happened. Now you could say that that's not to do with with ETs at all, and it's something else that
it could be very relevant. At the same time.
The sixth sense aspect, the psychic aspect of contact is. It's a given. It's absolutely a given. I would say definitely in over half the cases I've investigated, the individuals have individually expressed to me that they've got one or more what we class as sort of sixth sense type abilities, premonitions, or just being able to read people's emotions, even though they've never met them before or spoken with them, this sort of thing. And it comes out time and time again. You wouldn't believe the amount of times it comes out. It's far too common for it not to be an aspect of it. Now, the interesting thing, and one of the things I'm still trying to gather, is are the beings interested in them because they've got these abilities, or are they given the abilities by the beings? Now, in a lot of cases, they appear to have had kind of these abilities from childhood, and they sometimes won't experience contact until an older age. So that tends to suggest the first of those, doesn't it? But then how do we know that they haven't had experiences that they can't remember? Because a big aspect of contact is the missing time element of it, and again, that is an absolute regularity. It's very rare that the individual will remember the entire experience in great detail from start to finish. There's almost always gaps in it. Sometimes it's almost entirely gone, and they'll just have little flashbacks that something's happened, or not even any flashback of the actual thing. They'll just have an inkling that something took place, and that might lead them to check their watch, and they'll be like, 2 hours have gone by that I can't account for.
You do read about that a lot, don't you? In cases that time,
I mean, people think, oh, that's easy to dismiss. See, a lot of these aspects of contact, people think it's easy to dismiss, and still, until you start looking into the cases, and take my word for it, I've dealt with some incredible things. There was a case that happened on the M6 motorway with a couple from Wales. They'd gone to Great Barr to see their friend, and then they were just on their way home, and they're going down the M6. And all of a sudden, there's this bright blue sphere or something up in the sky, really bright blue light. And here's the weird thing, it felt to them that the whole of time had kind of slowed down to a halt. They said that there was a bridge ahead of them, and they could see the cars going over it. But as soon as this blue light appeared, it was almost like the cars weren't there anymore. They'd stopped still, like everything was frozen. And they pulled, but their car was still moving, so they pull over at the side of the road, and they're sitting there wondering what's going on with this blue light. After about 5 or 10 minutes, they're sitting there. They see this fox and runs across the road in front of them through the headlights, and that seems to kind of trigger things, and it boom, 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 and it just starts up again, and all of a sudden all the cars are back moving again. They can see them busy motorway. Cars start going past.
Wow.
So they're like, what on earth just happened with that? Get this, this is the impressive bit. They decide to go back to their friend's house, because they want to tell them about what's happened. They just say this weird blue light, and it felt like everything had froze. They go knock on the door, Their friend answers in their nightgown. And they said he'd been gone an hour, and they swear they've been gone like 10 minutes at most. They had 50 minutes missing time. Now, you can't really argue with that because you've got an independent witness there, confirming that they were gone for that amount of time. So something took place in that time.
And then, but a lot of people dismiss it and they make it. So why would you make up? So why would you go to the trouble of going through all this and sitting around for 50 minutes or something? Then making. It makes no sense.
It does
makes no sense.
And a lot of people are embarrassed and so they want to be anonymous as well. There's no publicity.
Another argument is that they're just doing it for the money. Now I can't say that anybody sells their story to the Sun for thousands of pounds and all that. That they're not in it to make money. That maybe some of the time they are, and I'm not saying, nor am I saying that every single article that goes out in the newspaper is fake. Because I've dealt with some cases where they decided to go to the newspaper, and I've spoken with those individuals, and I'm sure of their integrity. But obviously, it does sully that a bit, if they go to the newspaper, because people can say, they're just doing it for the money grabbing. Most of the time, these individuals are absolutely sure that they don't want their personal details going out. not just as a case of changing their name. A lot of the time, they don't even want me to mention what town they're in because they're that worried that people will find out about who they are. And this is integral to the general view of the subject by the public. That's the problem, is because of this ridicule element of the subject, which has been done and laid out on purpose by the media and the government for many years, and is still going on to this day. You know, this general ridicule of the subject makes people feel that, oh, I can't talk about that because people call me a nut.
Exactly.
So they shut up about it, you know, and they don't tell their story. And the people that do come forward with information, I believe, are very, very brave, and it's really good that you know, they're able to share those experiences. But yeah, almost always they'll ask for their personal details to be removed. Yeah, and now if they're in it for the money, why would they do that? And also they spend hours and hours sitting with me and talking about their experiences. You know, sometimes they might be an entire day sitting with me, going through experience after experience after experience in depth. And you can tell just from the emotion and the way that they're talking about it, those things that have actually happened to them. And I know that sometimes it might be misidentification, or they might be misinterpreting something that's happened to them and putting it down to aliens. Maybe if they've gone and ever watched a show on TV or read a book on the subject, they might be like, oh, I put 2 and 2 together, I've been abducted, or you know, I've seen a UFO. And I will openly admit that a lot of this is misidentification, will be misidentification. Both on the sightings of objects in the sky and of contact experiences. You know, there's multiple different explanations of a mundane explanations that could explain a lot of the aspects. But when you start dealing with cases where you've got multiple witnesses backing up each other's testimony, you've got independent witnesses who've seen things happen with this. With some of the UFO sighting cases, none of the ones I've directly investigated, but where you've got ones involving the military, which have got radar confirmation of these objects. You can't argue with evidence like that. You know, the radar confirms an object there. Pilot goes up, he sees an object out the window. You've got visual confirmation, sometimes from multiple angles, from multiple witnesses, of objects performing incredible manoeuvres that are way too advanced for our military to perform. You have to look at that, and you have to say that those objects are not only under control but cannot be built by us. I can't buy the one of the angles that's given on the subject a lot of the time is the military explanation. So what people will say is, oh, it's some sort of big worldwide military project that's going on.
I've heard that.
That. You see, here's the problem with that. There's numerous problems with that. Yeah, right. First of all the military around the world appear to all be looking into this subject. Yeah, right. Let's say the Americans have built these things and for some reason we're flying them all around the world in close encounters with people and all that, for whatever reason. Why would they be looking into the subject themselves and intercepting these things if they knew what they were? It doesn't make logical sense. If you say it's some sort of top secret aircraft, you know, black project or whatever, then why present it to public in plain sight in the middle of a city? I've dealt with lots of cases around Birmingham, close encounters, landings and things that have taken place. Seriously. They wouldn't do that logically. Would not approach random people just to see. They would test them out in places, you know, such as the infamous Area 51 and places like that.
That was like the Phoenix case, you know.
Oh, stunning!
Amazing, thousand people saw that. It was a military thing. I mean, you wouldn't do it right over a major city, would it? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
But then did they not try to put flares down to confuse people to say there was actually military flares at the time?
And the amazing thing is, I've seen some skeptical arguments, you know, blame the flares. Those who know the case know that there was a flare drop. The flare drop was their weather balloon for the Phoenix incident. It was, and it took place about several hours after the actual object had gone over. The actual object was seen between sort of 6:30 to before 8 o'clock. It wasn't until about 10:30 that the flares were dropped. They did that. I believe that they did that, and it seems clear as day that they did that to confuse people so that they'd see the flares, and then they could blame the lights that they'd seen on the flares. And this was not lights. This was a massive V-shaped object that blocked out the stars and went right over people's heads. I mean, even the governor, Fife Sorensen, you know, years later went on the record, and that was brilliant for me, because at the time he was obviously it was kind of making a laughing stock of it, the infamous incident, and then years later he goes on the record and says, I saw it too, and I believe it was an alien spacecraft, which said in his own words. Incredible. Yeah, and he said he was just doing that while he was the governor to keep things toned down with the public. And that's why a lot of the time it shows that it's real going on behind the scenes, and he was just in that position. He couldn't release that information, or was too scared of the backlash from it.
I mean, because people have in that position, they'll be threatened, obviously, won't they? And all kinds of stuff.
I'm sure behind the scenes, they would have been told what they are and aren't allowed to talk about. You'll find often with UFO cases that go out in the public that they've often ones that can be easily dismissed as something else, or even ones where it has been dismissed as something else. So they'll go through the case, and then they'll say, "Oh yeah, but it's okay because it turned out just to be a blimp at the end of the day," and that allows them to push the ridicule angle. These people that are seeing these things and misidentifying mundane things. But I've dealt with some cases, close-up cases, where it ain't no misidentification. These black flying triangles that are seen quite a lot more so in recent years. Recent, they've been seen a lot since the 80s, really, but and there have been some incredible incidents in Belgium. They had a wave of hundreds of sightings of these, and these things are still seen today. And I've dealt with cases where alien beings have been seen coming out of these things. I've dealt with contact cases where people have been taken aboard them and experienced abduction experiences involving these craft. I've got no doubt whatsoever that they're not even made things.
Is there any cases that stand out that have really blown your mind? Is there any particular one that
absolutely involving FTs? Or...
Yeah.
I mean, I've dealt with so many cases. You have to kind of bring things down a bit. Flying triangle cases. I dealt with a case in Erdington, which we believe happened some point between 1999 and 2003, and it involved two witnesses. One of which used to come down the group quite regularly. The other which I arranged to see later on. So they had a sighting late evening one night right outside where one of them lived. This was up in Erdington in the middle of Birmingham, so proper sort of suburbs. It was in no way a kind of rural out in the countryside, middle of nowhere. And they're out there, and opposite the road, there's this area of kind of rough ground, like a tip with lots of trees and bushes. And they used to go across there and just have a sneaky cigarette late at night and go and walk the dog. And they're out there, and they see these three red lights on the horizon. Well, when you see that, you think it's a plane, of course. Of course, people are at a distance. But as the object gets closer, they realise that it doesn't really look like a plane. It's coming on in, there's three red lights in a triangular shape. And he said there was this kind of weird wobbling effect to it, kind of like looking at mirage. Now, I've had this confirmed via other cases as well. And it might be some sort of distortion around the object, but it has been reported numerous times, So as this thing gets nearer and nearer, they're just standing there looking at it, and it comes right in. It's completely silent. It was a jet black equilateral triangle with a red light at the corner and a central light in the underside. That's often the lighting that are seen with these things, although they can have other configurations too. And it came right in, and it came in, and it came down, and it landed in the road in front of them. It was only a few meters from them, and they're just standing there, open mouthed. The dog's down over the side, and this thing comes down. It kind of hovers a few feet off the road surface, and it's just there. I mean, what would you do in that situation?
Well,
So standing there looking at it, and one of the two witnesses, the one who used to come down the group, he heard it making this really strange kind of sound. He said it almost like a didgeridoo kind of noise, like a wah wah wah, like pulsing sound. Now the interesting thing is, when I spoke with the other witness, he couldn't remember it making that sound at all. He said it was silent, from what he remembered. So anyway, so suddenly I stand at this thing for a number of minutes, and all of a sudden the dog just bolts. I guess it's spooked out with the situation. It just runs right past the object and runs off towards the house. Then he said a minute later, this thing just takes off again, and it just picks up like that, and it goes, and he said it hovered right over the chimney breast of his house, about sort of 5 foot above the roof of the house. Stays there about 30 seconds, and then it moves off silently again. And they lose it behind the roof of the house. Now there's an area of garden allotments behind the house, so they run down the side road to see if they can still see it. Totally gone. It's vanished, right? Now, that's not where the story ends, because he doesn't really recall what happened after that. He thinks they must have gone back to their own individual homes. I mean, what do you do after having an experience like that? But he thinks they must have gone back to their homes. Here, get this. When they woke up in the morning, neither of them could remember the incident at all. That it was like it had been blanked completely from their minds, Now, the only inkling they ever had for many years that it happened was that the dog wouldn't go anywhere near the area across the far side of the road. He got really spooked out, and he didn't know why. Now, for them to have this incredible incident happen and then have it completely blanked is really, really bizarre. You know, you think they'd have some sort of inkling of it. Now, here's the interesting thing. It did come back to them, but it only came back to one of the witnesses after he'd moved away from the address. So he moved house, and then within months of him moving house, he's just sitting there one day, and all of a sudden it comes back to him. And I've had this reported to me time and time again with incidents involving missing time. He said it was like remembering just any other memory from your past. You know, like when you're randomly thinking about stuff from years ago and you remember something might have happened back at school. It comes back to him, and he's like, "Did I dream that? Is that a dream? Why? How on earth would I forget seeing this big black flying object come down in the road in front of us?" So he rings his mate up. He says, "Do you remember when we saw that black triangular thing? Yeah, that triggers his mate." So then the other witness remembers then because of being triggered by the first one, and he's like, "Yeah, I remember that. You know, why did we forget that?" And very, very interesting. And it was absolutely to the letter. You know, I spoke with them both. Their testimony is confirmed. You're saying it only involves two witnesses. Yes, they could have made up the story. A lot of the time with these cases, you know, you've got there's a level of trust goes on with the witness. You know, when you don't have any kind of physical evidence, you have no photos or videos of it or anything that could back up. But the details that he gave me, and when I spoke with his friend, you know, that he also reported it. And also he had the one witness, the one who'd heard it making these strange sounds. He had an inkling that he'd heard them before, and he remembered an incident of being younger in his bedroom and hearing the same noise. Now, he couldn't remember what was involved with that, but it tends to suggest that he may have had contact, you know, not been the first time that this had happened with his craft. And then if you put that together, then you kind of think maybe it was there for him and his friend was just another observer who just happened to be, you know, alongside him at the time. You know, we can't say for definite. I've worked with a hypnotherapist. In contact, one of the ways that you can retrieve lost memories, the only tried and tested way really of retrieving lost memories possibly is through hypnotic regression. Now it's very controversial because it's been proven scientifically that that you can get false memories can come out in regression. But they're always very, very careful to kind of not to leave them and to get it all from them. So they generally take them back to the incident and they usually recount it in quite good depth. And if they've given me a lot of the details and they have got recollection of a lot of the details, all I can say is that the details of the bits that they do recollect appear to match exactly with what I've already been told. But then sometimes you get these bits of missing memory and there'll be gaps filled in, you know, and they'll have other memories back. Or sometimes they might see things for what they really are. There's an aspect of contact called, it's commonly referred to as screen memories. The beings are primarily the ones we call the greys, big bats. They're one of the most observed species that are reported, and they appear to be able to change their appearance to something else, and it usually seems to be something that the person is either interested in or something that makes them feel at ease. And it can sometimes be a person, like another family member. It can sometimes be something else, like Santa Claus or a clown or something like that. And it can sometimes be animals. It's quite famous that a lot of people have seen owls and they disguise themselves as owls. We did hope that perhaps this had happened with this case, and we hope to get back some details by having the witness regressed. But unfortunately, he couldn't be put under. Some people just can't be hypnotised. He couldn't relax enough to enter that state. So even though it is controversial, I still think it's kind of worth looking into. Although I always warn the individual when they undergo that. I first warn them about the possibility of false memories, especially if they've got an interest in the subject and have looked into abductions and that. They might fill in some of the gaps themselves, and their brain might tell them, and then from that point onwards, they'll think it's a real thing that's happened to them. You know, so you have to be very careful with it. But yeah, I've sat in on about sort of 15 or so, and it's quite fascinating to hear some of the details that come out under those.
Any like abduction cases where they've really in detail described the ETs and inside the ship? Have you had a lot of that as well? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, there's an integral link between UFOs and contact. A lot of people don't like to make that jump. They consider them as two completely separate things. They're not at all. In a lot of the cases I've dealt with, the individual sees a craft first and then are taken aboard it, or they sometimes hear the craft, so they might not see it, but they'll hear a humming sound or whatever outside the house, see a bright light coming in through the windows, you know, that you could interpret as a craft in a vicinity of their home. In other cases, they may not remember a UFO at that incident, but they might have other sightings of objects at other times, you know. And people who are repeaters, who have repeat contact through their life, have a much higher chance of seeing UFOs than the average person. A lot of those repeat cases usually, you know, will have sort of 5, 10 UFO sightings in, and we're not talking about flecks of light that could be misidentified balloons. We're talking about structured objects with multiple lights on them and this sort of thing. Sometimes forming amazing manoeuvres. You know, the probably one of the most fascinating cases that I looked into with contact was a case that occurred in Droitwich back in 2010. And one of the main reasons that was particularly fascinating was it had a video footage that appeared to show the lady in question dematerializing from the bed. Now that footage has gone out on YouTube, and of course you get the usual comments. Oh, it's a fake, you know. They sank into the bed with robotics and all this sort of. I assure you, I know it was real. That video footage was real. I know that. I went to the bedroom where this incident took place. The lady was deeply traumatized by the experiences she's undergone, as a lot of contactees are. It affects people's lives. I've dealt with cases where it's broken down people's marriages. I've dealt with people who've been on the verge of kind of suicide or some deep depression because of it. It's a very scary subject, and when their own spouses and that won't believe what they're experiencing, it can create real risks, you know, with people. And it's a real shame when, you know, people take the mick out of the subject and everything, because when you see this side of it, you know, that's when it really hits home, you know, how much it's going to affect people. Anyway, with her experience, she had a couple of abduction experiences within the space of a week towards the start of 2010. With a lot of people, they have experiences through their life before that, but they will dismiss them. They'll push them to the back of their mind. It's got to be something else, you know. They won't think, you know, and then they'll have a certain experience that is just basically undeniable to them. You know, there's just too much has gone on with it, and they just can't ignore it. You know, it's sometimes referred to as a trigger experience. And then they'll often go back and look at what's happened earlier in their life, and they'll be like, oh yeah, there was that thing that happened. And sometimes when they get talking about it, they realise it's gone right back to their childhood, you know. She was this was quite a rural location on the outskirts of Droitwich, and one night she just finds it quite hard to sleep, and she goes through to check on her daughter for 1:30 in the morning, and she happens to glance out the window, and in the distance, over by this clump of trees, she sees this orange glowing oval shaped thing, just a light, and she thinks it's a plane crashing or something, but she realises it's moving too slow to be a plane crash, and she's trying to see whether it's an object inside the room. You know, she's turning around, she gets a piece of paper and puts it up on the glass, you know, and she can still see the object through the paper. So she knows it's outside, so she's doing these checks, you know, she's like checking it's not an LED light behind her or something like that. Anyway, she turns around to look at her daughter. When she looks back, the object is no longer in the distance, it's now jumped and it's down in the field, yeah, it's about 100 yards away from her home. So she's looking at it down at a diagonal. She said it looked like a bank of very, very bright lights, yeah. She couldn't see the object itself, the lights were too bright, but it's just this row of these lights. Now, probably thinking, what would you do in that experience? What would you do? What you would probably do is go and wake up your spouse. You might ring the police. You'd wake up your family. Hey, look at this, everybody. You know what she does? She says, okay, and goes back to bed. Basically, she was in this kind of altered state of mind, and this happens regularly with contact. And it's one of the reasons why there's not that many photos and videos. People are saying, if they're undergoing these abductions, why not just video the beings? Yeah, why not take photos of them and get them posed for a selfie? You know, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Most of the time, when the individual undergoes these experiences, they're not thinking in a normal frame of mind. Yeah, and they're totally complacent about it, like it's an everyday occurrence. And this is a classic example of when this happened. So she totally accepts the fact that there's this glowing weird thing down in the field outside the house and goes back to bed. Yeah. Next thing she becomes aware of is she thinks she's only been in bed a short time. and she finds herself in a lying down position in a kind of darkened area. It's no longer in a room, and one of her daughters is next to her. And her daughter says, her daughter says, leans in close to her and says, "Don't worry, Mum, it's your turn next. They're not going to hurt you." And she didn't know what she means for that. Feels this kind of whooshing sensation, almost like going through a tunnel here. Then she finds herself in this other area. She appears to be free floating in a lying down position with these kind of weird grid lines around her. Now that's quite unusual. A lot of the time with contact, people find themselves in a white sort of glowing room with no determinate light source, or sometimes a metallic room where kind of curved sort of dome shaped room, very regularly reported. It was dark, and she said there were these glowing yellow lines in crisscross all around her, like she's free floating in this. She sensed there was some sort of tall being up here, but I couldn't see it because she was paralysed. It's very, very common. The individual is paralysed in the experiences, leading some skeptics to believe that it can be explained away as sleep paralysis. It cannot. Sleep paralysis occurs in the actual bedroom of the individual, and it's a known thing. And I've dealt with some contactees who've actually had sleep paralysis experiences and contact experiences, and they know the difference between the two. And they'll be like, "No, it was a sleep paralysis." But I believe that they shut down the individual during these experiences so that they won't fight back.